I think it's just understanding that there's an appreciation that there are different lags, right? There's different cycles. The buyer has their own cycle and lag. Marketing has its own cycle and lag. Sales has its own cycle and lag. And we think that they should all be the same. Again, this is part of the lie that we were told over the last 20 years, that these VC-backed companies and these software companies like HubSpot, and I'm sorry to say, but HubSpot, you're wrong.
Hey, welcome back to Tomorrow's Best Practices Today. As always, I'm Clark Newby, and I'm joined today by Achim Klor. Now, Achim has 15 years, well, probably more than 15 years experience running B2B marketing agencies. But he's also been operational, 25 years plus of hands-on experience in brand management, positioning, messaging, all the stuff that we worry about here on the show. Going all the way back to time at GE Capital IT Solutions, ultimately being the VP of Marketing at Lighthouse Systems. Currently, he's building Klor Consulting, which he focuses on go-to-market and AI adoption advisory. We're going to talk a lot about both of those things in the next few minutes. And also Castellar Marketing Expansion. So he's based in Canada, and he helps younger firms with their international expansion, going into Latin America, Asia Pacific, even Europe. So had a fantastic conversation with Achim Klor. Enjoy. And one of the things that we've talked about is your point of view that the demand gen playbook today is kind of a lie, I think is the way that you put it. Talk to us a little bit about, why you would say something so blasphemous, and what is the way out of that conundrum?
Well, first of all, I'm just as guilty as anybody. I've been in the business now for roughly about 30 some odd years, in and out of different kind of roles of the business of market and go to market. So I drank the Kool-Aid like everybody else when the digital playbooks started really hitting the boardrooms back, say, 15, 20 years ago. That was really the thing that I think a lot of marketers were looking for, to be able to measure stuff, and to measure stuff that was traditionally very difficult to measure. Mm-hmm. I think where the lie comes in is that the measurement is one thing, the outcome is a whole other thing. And so we've been caught by our own doing, again, I'm just as guilty, of listening to, typically a lot of VC-backed companies, a lot of VC pressure to get things, through quickly, and get investment dollars back into the investor's pocket like faster than ever. So there's that. And also I would say that there was this fairy tale that I would say that was given to us marketers as, this is how you go to market now. You create demand, you generate demand, and then you create leads and you generate leads. So that was the playbook, and it's been the playbook for that time. The problem with that is that the CFOs are now asking, okay, where's the payback, right? And there isn't any. That's the reality that we're living in right now. There isn't any payback. In fact, a lot of CFOs, and I've just had this chat with a good friend of mine, Mark Stoos, who runs Proof Analytics. He's already talked to 2 CFOs recently that said, my go-to-market is bankrupt. So that pretty much sums up where we are today. And we can get more into the details of that, but that's it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, so the disconnect, so I completely hear what you're saying. We're kind of gifted the ability to measure much more than we were ever able to measure before. The olden days was I'm wasting half my marketing or advertising budget. I wish I knew which half. Right now, with marketing automation systems over the last, whatever, 25 years or so, we've been able to measure all this stuff. And I guess it's kind of given us an illusion is what you're saying, that we can see, because we can measure everything, that's the end goal of measuring. But what's coming out the other end? So the conversations with the CFO, right? That's always where the rubber hits the road. So do you think that those two, but I'm sure they're not the only ones, CFOs, that were feeling that the go-to-market investments were somewhat bankrupt? Is that a matter of things having not played out enough yet? Is it a matter of not thinking we're doing the right things, actually not doing the right things? What do you think are their characteristics that are leading to this disconnect?
I think it's always been there, and I don't think the current playbook will fix itself. And the reason why it won't, because it never has, right? You might get some black swans. There's always those, but you can't hedge that. You can't go to your CFO and say, I'm going to create a black swan. They're going to show you the door. The reality that we're living in today is that when this playbook was created, digital marketing was a very new thing. And we were transitioning from traditional marketing to this digital platform. And it made all kinds of promises that, you'll be able to see things, you'll be able to, you'll get closer to the customer, all this kind of stuff. But that's not really how it's worked. I mean, if we even look at our own buying habits today, you, me, anybody that's listening to this and watching this, is like, just think about your own buying habits. Like, have you really changed that much? In fact, I would say the opposite. You probably put email blockers up. You probably don't use emails. You probably have call blockers on your phone because you get all kinds of spam phone calls. In fact, you've probably got more gates up now today than ever before. So why would it be any different for a vendor, right? This is the other thing. Like, we think when we've got our vendor cap on that the buyer is going to buy our thing. But when we got the buyer cap on, we're avoiding the vendor. Right?
That's right.
Right?
Oh, look at all this terrible incessant marketing that is getting splashed at me.
Right?
Now let's go splash some marketing.
Yeah, this is why the playbook won't work. And the other thing is too, is that, like I said about reality, today's reality is not the same as it was in 2020, in 2005. It's not the same as it was in pre-COVID, for that matter. It's not even the same as it was 2-3 years after COVID. The dynamic around the world today, geopolitically, economically, there's a bunch of things, climate, all that stuff is way different today. The world is much more unstable today than it ever has been. So to be running playbooks from even 2 years ago is just irresponsible.
So what's the way forward? So this is, I think, a good statement, a good analysis of the situation we find ourselves in. When you're working with clients, how are you, what North Stars are you giving them to try to manage through this environment that we're in and set their goals and their plans for the future? Well,
it just coming to terms with reality is first and foremost. I mean, I used to work for General Electric and for GE Capital IT Solutions back in the 90s. And I remember one of the things that Jack Welch used to always say, and that is, you face reality as it is today, not as it was, and not as you wish it to be. You face reality as it is today. And reality is a constantly moving target. So you need to be on top of it. This is why the measurement fairy tale never worked, because what you measured was in the past. And by the time you've measured it, the buyer's already 5 steps ahead of you, right? And in enterprise, they're 100 steps ahead of you, right? So we can't be looking at data. I'm not saying not to look at data, because data is important. But the problem with a lot of marketers, and I've done this, I'm just as guilty, is that we correlate everything that we see. We don't actually look at what's causing that, right? And if you look at the cause of what's happening, the effect is different, or the way that you come to the conclusion of the effect will become different unless you just look at the effects. If you're constantly looking at the effects, which is the measurement, you're never going to see the causes.
Decision science and analysis, what a lot of this was before we were calling it go to market, maybe certainly before marketing automation systems, right? How are people taking in information? What is going to motivate them to make a decision, decide it's time to make a decision, decide what's important in making that decision? And so often we're on our measurable side of how many emails went out, when the post went up, how many clicks, et cetera, and not in that mindset. This philosophy, these principles, right, of how the decisions, how we are interacting with our prospects and our customers, making those decisions.
Yeah, and the decisions really come down to, again, understanding the cause and effect. Causality is a big miss in go-to-market, because we've been trained, again, by the lie, that measurement is proof, and it's not, right?
Right.
Just because you can measure it and manage it doesn't mean it's true, right? Because again, reality is reality. You can't argue reality. Reality is physics, as an example, right? If I say I'm going to jump off a 30-story building because I don't believe in gravity, well, guess what? The reality of gravity the outcome's always going to be the same. Let's put it that way, right? So, but your truth and my truth, those can be different, right? Your opinion, my opinion, those can be different. That's why I always say opinions in marketing are dangerous, right? Especially when there's opinion by committee, that's even worse, right? So if we're not looking at what's causing things, we can't make informed decisions. That's really what it comes down. And this is the thing that I think is the realization of where go to market, especially in B2B, is coming. They're coming to a headwind now. There's a reckoning happening. And I believe, and this is what Mark and I talked about last week, and I honestly believe that the marketing that as we know it today, the go-to-market engine as we know today, will be gone in 2 years. It'll be gone because AI is changing everything around that, especially analytical AI, not just generative AI. And as AI gets better and better and better, it's becoming an amazing bullshit detector. It's actually really good at showing you where you're wrong and where you're failing. It's not so good at telling you what the future is because it doesn't have that context. It only has yesterday's data as of today and back however many years, right? It doesn't have anything going forward. Only we can surmise that, right?
It's only as
And
smart
having
as
that
all the
context.
mistakes we've already put out there, right?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing, right? There's good data and there's all the crap data as well that it's also referencing, right? So being able to make that judgment and the decision of when AI spits something out at you, as an example, this is a good example actually. When AI does an output, do you have the subject matter expertise to know when it's bullshitting you or not, right?
Right.
Right.
Right. When it's confused, right? Do you
Yeah.
know enough? You're asking the AI something you don't know about, but you have to know enough about it to know if the
Right.
answer is bullshit or not, right?
Absolutely.
So what do you think? What are a few of the because particularly our audience is trying to figure out how to, you know, where to be on the AI curve, how to apply the technology. What are some? Because I agree, AI is only going to compound some of our problems. Hopefully, it is a way through solving some of them. How can marketers use AI effectively today? Do you think? What is it helping to solve? What is it not helping to solve as we stand here, being here in the now?
Well, I mean, for anybody who's new, as opposed to somebody who has a track record, it's going to be different, right? Because you only know what you know. You only know what you
Yeah.
know, right? And you don't know what you don't know. So I would suggest for anybody who's new to get around some really, really smart senior people who know what they're talking about. Um, uh, and for the folks who are seasoned, who just start thinking critically about what you're inputting into that AI, what you're asking it to do has a lot to do with what it gives you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest, and this is what I advise all my clients is when they're adopting AI, is be very, very, very diligent and especially around guardrails, right? You have to understand what you're asking, why you're asking it, and like who it's for, what it's for. I'll give you an example. If you're basing your use of AI on, say, the fairy tale that we've been given over the last 20 years, it's going to give you a fairy tale. And look, and unless you understand what it gives you, AI is the ultimate yes man. It'll pat you on the back. It'll agree with you. That's unless you give it the guardrails not to, right? So you have to be very, very disciplined again around how you use AI. If you're just looking for a quick fix, it's like taking drugs. Yeah, you'll get high, but then the crash is going to come, right? So, I would suggest to anybody, young and new, because it's such a new thing, learn it, get into it, learn it. Do not take the attitude that I'm not going to use AI because it will ultimately replace you. AI won't replace you, but the person who knows how to use it will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the classic observation, right? You've also used a phrase when we were talking, delegation is not abdication. I mean, a lot of people, even I think particularly on the CFO side of the equation, I guess we'll say, companies are looking, as we sit here in 2026, they're looking at how they can change their headcount shape by investing more in AI, using agents for what flesh and blood people used to do, etc. There's a lot of pressure, right? To like, you don't need a team of people. You need a good AI platform and the right questions. But once you do that, then you're taking all these humans out of the equation that are actually making these decisions and evaluating these answers, etc. Right?
Absolutely, and the danger of that is legal issues. As an example, anybody in the United States needs to think about the Delaware ruling from 2023, right? That applies to all officers and directors of every company. So for instance, if you work for a company that's just turfed, say 20% of its workforce, the fiduciary duty and accountability of the company doesn't go away with those people. It just floats upstream, right? So it's just the next person in line. So as an example, if you now have a small C-suite that is now becoming happy because they just chopped and cut all these employees, well, guess what? The CFO, the CEO, the CTO, all those folks now have that accountability. Because in a court of law, a judge is not going to sentence a bot to prison. They're going to sentence the people, right?
Yeah.
So
not yet. But
again,
yes,
delegation is not abdication. Just because you delegate something to a bot is no different than delegating to a human being.
Then there's also all the dollars coming in. You talked earlier about the great practice of the go-to-market team, sales and marketing and support and everybody together. I think that's a great best practice. But breaking down those silos, at least operationally. But there are also silos in the plan, right? The sales team has a number. And the marketing team probably has a number based on that number, working backwards, etc. How do you work in those teams? How do you maintain that unity when you're battling against the fairy tale of, well, we're doing marketing, so demand is going to be generated, versus where the rubber hits the road? Sales needs to do the number, and the board has expectations around that. How does that typically go for your engagements? What lessons would you share with us about trading those off or coexisting across those two realities?
Well, so the very short answer to your question is time lag. And again, this gets back to reality. There's always this sort of very quiet pause when I bring up time lag in a boardroom. It's the elephant in the room, really, and nobody really wants to deal with it. And
nobody wants to hear about something taking longer.
And nobody wants to hear that, especially the CFO and the CEO. So there's all this denial and a lot of this, looking for what else could be the solution So the denial and the avoidance of that elephant in the room is, you can hear a pin drop when that topic comes up. Some companies are a little more mature about dealing with it than others, and some companies are aware of it. However, there are a lot of the companies that I have coached in the past have a lot of times it's yeah, but I gotta hit my number. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
I hear you, but how am I gonna make this quarter, right? And unfortunately, the reality of that situation is, well, what you did this quarter in marketing, you're not going to see for 3 or 4 quarters, if that. So if you're having a problem with your sales today, it's because of what you did or didn't do a year ago. So don't cry that you're not getting sales right now, because you should have thought about that 3 or 4 quarters ago, right? But you didn't. And now you're wondering why it's not working. Your buyer doesn't care about your CAC. Your buyer doesn't care about your product or your service. Your buyer doesn't care that you're in the situation that you're in. They don't. Because if I'm the buyer, I don't care if my vendor is having a problem. Do you care? I don't think you do, right? But as vendors, we're like, how do we get the buyer to buy? You can't, right? You can't. That's the problem. That's the reality. Again, thinking of Jack Welch here, that's the reality today, not yesterday, and we're not tomorrow, right? So again, it's a very, very thorny, as Mark Stewart calls it, very thorny and very difficult conversation to have. But it's a conversation that must be had. Otherwise, nothing changes, right? And so I've seen companies just go through this denial process for the next 3 or 4 quarters, and they just keep sinking, right? So you either deal with it or you don't. And so understanding time lag is the key to the GTM meetings, right? Because when marketing has their say, the context around what marketing is doing that week, everybody on the team knows that what's happening in marketing that week, they're not going to see for another year.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and often in the past I've seen, so I've been fortunate that folks usually understand that there is a lag, there's a waterfall, we call it a funnel, whatever we call it. The time goes by as the status is changing. But what I find often in these go-to-market gatherings is like, we want to get the reps together with marketing, we get the feedback, of course, and then we're going to then tell them what's coming. And they never care about what's coming. They're like, this does not change my world for 6 months. I could be fired by then. Yeah, and it's always a challenge to try to keep marketing's perspective downstream and where like it's not none of the marketing really matters until it causes a deal to happen, and sales attention upstream of like, these are the signals out on the horizon that are going to be coming your way that you should be thinking about, and stuff we're hoping to push your way, topics we're hoping to bring into the conversation so that you can be like on their neck when the time comes. It's different. That the time lag is difficult, I think, in both directions.
I think it's just understanding that there's an appreciation that there are different lags. Right? There's different cycles. The buyer has their own cycle and lag. Marketing has its own cycle and lag. Sales has its own cycle and lag. And we think that they should all be the same. Again, this is part of the lie that we were told over the last 20 years, that these VC-backed companies and these software companies like HubSpot, and I'm sorry to say, but HubSpot, you're wrong. You need to get your shit together. I hope you do. And the same with Salesforce and Marketo and these companies. They've tried so hard over the last 15, 20 years to create this deterministic, linear machine for marketing. And it's not. Right. Marketing is non-linear. Marketing is probabilistic, not deterministic, right? Because guess what? It's people that are part of marketing, and people are irrational. We change our minds. We have fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If I don't trust you, I'm not going to, even though you're on my short list, I may not buy from you. Guess what? I probably won't, right?
Yeah.
If I don't like you, even though you're a great brand. And I've been told you guys are great, but my experience has been crap. I'm not going to buy from you, right? And so that's the reality that these GTMs need to be discussing on a weekly basis, and I force them to. It's uncomfortable, and they try to skirt around the issues a lot of the times, but we talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, it just goes in the back of the mind, and guess who gets blamed when things don't go well? Marketing, right? You should have told us. You should have brought leads in sooner. Blah, 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 blah. And then look at the dashboard. The dashboard says that everything's great, but why isn't the revenue here? Well, it's because the dashboard is measuring something that happened 6 months ago, right? The buyer's already way past the dashboard, right? You've got data of when the buyer was hitting, and they're like miles ahead of you already. They've already decided who they're going to buy, and you're now measuring it. And guess what? They're not buying from you. So those are hard conversations to have, but they must be had.
Awesome. We always ask our thought leaders that come on that are, well, you're not really, you're not just thought leaders, because you're also out with your hands getting dirty on the real world, real time in go to market. But what do you feel are the trends, the topics, the LinkedIn post screeds that are overrated versus underrated right now? What's overrated in our conversations versus underrated for our audience?
I would say be very wary of, and again, I'm just as guilty. I've done this, so that's why I'm calling it out. I'm not a saint by any stretch. Is that just watch out for these lead gen gimmicks, these demand gen gimmicks. HubSpot just, a few months ago, they launched this ad, 1,000 prompts, download it now. Like 1,000 prompts for marketing. Who the hell needs the 1,000 prompts for marketing, right? But it's a lead gen tool. It's a lead magnet that they want for their own thing. They're not even thinking about you or I, right? They just want you to download their 1,000 prompts so you can drown in it, and then the opportunities that you should be working on, you're distracted with this crap. Watch for that stuff, because it's not helping. What I suggest is look for people who are talking about the reality of the world we live in today. People like Mark Stoops, follow him. People like Dale Harrison, he's a data scientist, fantastic resource, follow him. Liam Mulrooney, another fantastic thought leader. Kerry Cunningham over at Sixth Sense, he used to be with Forrester. Fantastic insights from these folks. David Lacombe, another one. Mark Ogme. I can go on and on and on. Ann Handley over at Marketing Profs. She's an amazing content person. She lives and breathes in this stuff. She calls out the BS all the time. So those are people who I would start following, and start reading their stuff, because they're talking, like I said, a truth that is very uncomfortable. And that we need to talk more about that, because the world is not comfortable right now, right? And my advice to anybody who is living in the past, or trying to create playbook, or trying to create campaigns based on what worked yesterday, oh my gosh, stop! Just don't do that, because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Probably the best thing I can say to those folks is, measurement again is not truth, right? Just be smart about the other thing too is that are these carousels that go on about marketing versus branding. There's a fellow, Matt Georgeson is another one. He's an art director, creative director kind guy. He runs his own agency. Another fantastic resource. So Matt Georgeson, look him up and follow him. He calls that stuff out all the time, right? So if you're thirsty for knowledge, and thirsty for the things that will advance your career and help you unlearn some of these old bad habits that I've had to, and I'm still unlearning, by the way, do that. I highly recommend you do that. If you don't care, you just want to spam people, and you gotta make your sales guy happy. Don't listen to any of this. Just follow
Get
HubSpot.
another job. Right.
Okay.
Get in another organization. So Achim, so when you're not helping people break their bad habits, when you're not working with all these clients, um, what gets you? What else gets you excited in life these days? What are you looking at? Maybe what are you doing outside? Obviously, we're a community here at Best Practices Today. What are the? It's always interesting to hear what things are turning folks on outside of their day to day of go to market.
I just turned 61 in February. So one of the things is I'm active. I still play hockey twice a week, and I play in two bands. I'm a drummer, and I got a guitar player and harmonica guy, and I play a bunch of instruments. So I play in two bands, one cover band, one original. I just keep the brain going. I read, maybe not as much
Yeah.
as I should, but I do get into these. I've been getting in back. I get back into my master's books on an annual basis just to keep that in front of me, because those are really key. I don't put them on the shelf and forget about them. What else do I do? I help anybody that needs advice. I'm happy to talk shop with those folks. I'm not looking, for money, so to speak, when it comes to that kind of stuff. What else? I got some side projects that look on the go as well. One is a market entry, a market expansion thing that I'm doing with a bunch of Canadian guys up here, just because of all the crap that's going on, and helping some Canadian companies think differently about where they can do business in Asia or in Europe or in Latin America.
Yeah.
And also, what else? I have something called 13 Laps, which is a go-to-market. It's a 13-week rolling calendar go-to-market tool. That it basically it doesn't measure anything. It just keeps account of the quarter. It doesn't. It's not a replacement for any of the tools that you use. It actually sits on top of your stack, and it helps the GTM team and the C-suite just keep things honest on a weekly basis. So those kind of things I'm doing right now.
That's amazing. 13 laps makes me think of like the Farmer's Almanac, or what it's like. Well, this is, it's the middle of March, so you should, begin thinking about your planning, or you should be, getting your seed stock ready, or et cetera, to kind of help you keep on the rhythm of your quarter.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm starting the beta of that in a couple of weeks. And so I'm hoping to launch that next year. 13 laps is all about swim lanes, because you got your GTM swim lanes, and so you're doing your laps, right? So
yeah,
and
there you go.
Every week's a lap.
Listen, I hope everybody is getting this down, right? Achim has given us so many, reminders of the masters to read, and I'm really intrigued by this 13 laps thing. How can folks learn more? How can folks get in touch with you? What other channels are you on these days where folks can hear more and engage with the things that you're figuring out?
I'm on LinkedIn. The best way to hit me up is on LinkedIn. Send me a connection. Happy to always to connect with people and talk shop. So I'm pretty easy to find. There's only one Achim Klor, I think, on LinkedIn. So.
That's great. And then you're doing, but you guys have a podcast though, right?
Oh yeah. So thanks for the reminder. So I talked about Mark enough that I just totally forgot. So Mark Stuess and I do a LinkedIn Live. We do every 2 weeks on LinkedIn. We do a LinkedIn Live called the Causal GTM Leader. And if you're interested in causal AI, causality, causal analytics, causal thinking, plug in. Mark is a wealth of information. And so Mark and I do that every 2 weeks. So if you're interested in that, plug in. We're happy to have you.
So check it out, folks. There's lots of ways to learn more from the insights that Achim's sharing with us. Thank you, Achim Klor, so much for taking this time with us, sharing your thoughts, cracking open all this experience that you've gained with your clients, and and spending time with these uncomfortable truths. We got to figure out our way forward in such a turbulent time. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.